This question has been asked on a couple of videos now, and I think it's an interesting idea, even though it's kind of busted. But that's part of what makes it interesting, and it makes you appreciate the current balance of Gen 3 more when you think about it. So, Roost came along in Gen 4, obviously, and the big thing is that it came along at the same time as Stealth Rock. That's the basic idea of the balance behind it, as we're gonna see Roost on in a metagame without rocks is gonna be kind of insane. Um, Simply because of a big strength of flying types and one levitator that gets Roost, Flygon. That one doesn't apply to as much because it's stealth rock resistant. But a big strength of the flyers in Gen 3 is that they're spikes immune. So no matter how many layers Skarmory gets, then they're going to switch in and out of battle just the same. I guess you could make an argument like, well, they can't switch in and out as freely if their teammates are being hacked apart by spikes, but you get the general idea. So without rocks, then their longevity just goes through the roof. And this goes from some of the best, arguably most broken Pokemon around already to Pokemon that would just, be good in general. Like, I'm quickly scrolling through the lower tiers to see if there's anything that would benefit so much from Roost that it would maybe become more of an OU presence. I mean, Dragonite is a cool idea. If it had got Roost and Heal Bell, that would be very unique as a spikes, because when Pokemon like Zapdos rely on Roost for recovery, then as opposed to rest, then you would want to have some sort of guard against status, which is not necessarily going to be Heal Bell, of course, because plenty of defensive Flygons already, they're vulnerable to status, and they don't necessarily need to be paired with Heal Bell. They just need to be careful about having a teammate that can help pivot around that status. So I think with Zapdos it would mostly be a similar case, but Dragonite would also have the very unique properties of being a Heal Beller that is immune to spikes, which it already is now, but also having recovery. So, yeah, nothing in BL really. D9, I mean, cool, but Salamence is the obvious standout. And in UU, I don't think so. I don't think it's going to make... I guess Gligar would actually be pretty cool as a defensive Pokemon if it had Roost, but the problem is that the rest of its move pool is still so barren. No Taunt, no Knockoff. If it had either of those, it'd be really good, but, SD Roost, I don't know. Maybe. It wouldn't hurt for sure, but I don't think it fundamentally changes enough about Gligar. But yeah, we'll be through with the lower tiers in a second, then get to the main stuff. Scyther, that might be awesome. Scizor, that might be interesting. But, Scizor, again, that's the same thing with the lower tiers getting Roost. Like, it would be good for their respective tiers. I mean, UU Scyther with Roost, good lord. But I don't think it fundamentally changes enough about them to really launch them into OU. So, the OU Pokemon that would get Roost: Aerodactyl, Charizard, Flygon, Moltres, Salamence, Skarmory, and Zapdos. So you can already kind of imagine how this is going to go. I mean, Skarmory, part of me wants to just center this whole thing around Skarmory getting banned and everything else following from that, because Skarmory with Roost is so hilariously broken. Because a lot of things that hit Skarmory hard, quote unquote, do so in the 30 to 40 range, and they rely on doing it over the course of a game. And yes, they have to contend with Protect. That's obviously a big pain. But if you can consistently bash Skarmory for that 35-ish%, it's not going to last forever, even with Protect. Incidentally, this is why Wish Blissey is such a nasty partner for Skarmory, because it does basically give it Roost in a lot of scenarios. It's like, oh, that Metagross HP Fire, that Swampert Hydro Pump, that, T-Tar Rock Slide, oh, look, they've just bounced off. That Snorlax Focus Punch, yeah, forget it. So, yeah, that's... For Skarmory to be able to do that itself... Now, you might argue, well, BKC, a lot of things that Skarmory does defensively in advance are centered around its ability to protect. And I would say, yeah, but Roost is just so much more immediate. So I mean, Skarmory protecting and being hard to kill from full health, that's one thing. But so much worse is when because if Skarmory's at like 20% and it protects up to 26, then you're probably not going to have a problem finishing it off with your arrow or whatever. But if Skarmory comes in on like a banded EQ and it's at 16% and then roosts up, it's basically Skarmory all over again. Protect can't do that. So yeah, I think it really would be too much. I mean, the way it necessitates Magneton, because it goes from it takes any hit and spikes up and toxics and protects and then slowly gets back up to high health, to only needing one turn to be back at full immediately later on. It's ridiculous. And it will find that one turn. I mean, as much as the metagame would warp itself around, let's hit Skarmory everywhere. Blissey never leaves home without Thunderbolt or Flamethrower or something, for example. Just so everything just does a certain percent to it. It's still going to be too much, because doing over 50 to Skarmory is the tough part. So, yeah, I really don't see Skarmory not getting banned. So, everything that follows... I mean, I think that there'd still be plenty of balance in advance without Skarmory. The tier definitely warps around it. There's more freedom without it, for sure. But the other Pokemon that get Roost, they're going to be like one of the pokes on the screen right now, Salamence. I mean, I don't know about fitting it on DD, just because, I mean, some people don't have qualms with using DD Refresh. I personally do not love that set. But hey, if you want to run DD Refresh, no reason you can't run DD Roost. You survive that Ice Beam, then you Roost or something. I mean, I don't know that it fundamentally makes that much of a difference in terms of one-on-ones. But in terms of the biggest change would be DD Mence's problem is that you can't really switch it in early in the game, because as soon as you take one hit with it, then it no longer is at that 100% condition that you need it to be in order to take that Ice Beam or that Ice Punch or whatever when it's going for the sweep. And with DD Roost, you can switch it in early in the game, and you can take that hit from like Heracross's Mega Horn or whatever, and then you can Roost up and still be in good shape later on. So that's a major difference. But the biggest change would be Roost on the mixed set. Well, Toxic Stall no longer has to run, or Defensive Salamence. I mean, Wish is great support. I think you'd still see Wish on occasion, but you no longer have to run Wish and Protect. Which is big, because you no longer needing 2 turns to guarantee your recovery in the event that you need it. That's really significant. You could run Roost and Wish if they wound up being legal together, which I assume they would be, because Roost is a TM. So yeah, you could just run Roost and Wish, and depending on the situation, then Toxic and Flamethrower, and yeah, it's great. I mean, sometimes you still want Protect to scout Arrow's intentions with Band or whatever, but you have a great option otherwise. And you can sometimes bold or defensive Salamence wants more attacking moves. So with Roost, Toxic, Flamethrower, and then you can throw in like Roar or Dragon Claw or whatever you want. So yeah, that's another. But like the main appeal that most people are gonna enjoy is mixed Salamence, Dragon Claw, Fire Blast, Brick Break, and then Roost in the last slot. That is going to be its most easily slapped on application, or a common one at least. So yeah, that's absolutely insane, because again, Roost on such Pokemon that don't get affected by spikes, a lot of the time with pokes like Mence or the other Pokemon on the screen, which I paused for a good reason, then they are vulnerable to being beaten down by repeated hits over time. Like Zapdos has to use Rest for recovery. But with Roost, then not so much, and suddenly their flexibility in battle situations, it just goes crazy. Like if this DD Mence had Roost, well, I guess it would have to give up a move, but if this Zapdos had Roost, it could very easily just start stalling these or start healing in the face of these sub 50 burned +1 DD Mence Rock Slides, as just one example. I mean, Zapdos suddenly roosting on slower Ice Beams, nightmarish. It just becomes so much more on offensive and defensive sets alike. Because a lot of times on offensive sets, you have Thunderbolt, Hidden Power, and then the last two. I mean, people like BP, Baton Pass, because it's very easy to use, like U-Turn. and then you throw in your Thunder Wave, your Toxic, whatever, and you kind of have some room to do whatever you want, and you throw in Roost, and suddenly that's the best option by far. I mean, maybe if you're running the most offensive team anyone's ever seen, then maybe not. But if you're running like anything that doesn't operate at that screaming fast pace, put it this way, if your team isn't so fast that you barely even need leftovers on the Zapdos, then you'll probably appreciate Roost. So, I mean, defensive teams, it's, again, that whole losing the rest and sleep talk. Yeah, you lose the sleep absorb for Breloom, but there are other things that can do that. And you gain another move. That's so big. Like, Roost compensating for the poor recovery on these Pokemon, and not only gives them more immediate options for healing to, more efficient extents, because obviously rest heals more, but it also has that drawback of putting you to sleep, so it's more efficient with Roost. It not only heals you more efficiently and more reliably, but it also gives you more moves with which you can be threatening, and that's just so much better on both sides. So Flygon is another example. Flygon doesn't really noticeably change that much. I guess it does in the sense that now you can Roost off something like a T-Tar Focus Punch a lot more easily. But it's not in terms of... because it's very resilient. It's got the Sand and Spikes immunity a la Skarmory. So it's in terms of that, it's not changing that much. But in terms of like shrugging off hits, then yes, absolutely. Suddenly you can shrug off DD Ments a lot more reliably after you've Toxic'd it. Things like that. So, I mean, then I don't think Aerodactyl will use it that much. There is a very, goofy arrow set, Sub-Protect Toxic Flamethrower, which ruins offensive teams. I don't know that you necessarily benefit too much from running Roost there. I mean, hey, maybe you do, but I think generally you really like having the Protect to buy extra turns alongside Substitute. So that one, hey, maybe I'm overlooking something, but that one I don't really see changing too much. Because, again, Arrow doesn't really need its health too much in terms of switching into attacks. It just likes subbing and protecting and Toxic Stalling. And since it's not taking attacks very well, then it's not like Ments and Zapdos and Flygon, where you want to, shrug off that Metagross Meteor Mash or what have you. So, you just want to buy turns. So, and with Arrow, you do that by guarding it from hits, not by healing hits off. Charizard and Moltres are interesting cases. Well, mainly Moltres, because Moltres, with Charizard, you actually like taking hits, because you get closer and closer to Blaze. So, when Charizard has that amazing niche of switching into Metagross and actually threatening it out with an OHKO, just like Moltres. But unlike Moltres, Charizard actually enjoys the damage taken from Meteor Mash because it gets it closer to Blaze range, which makes it way stronger. And of course, it's got that higher speed. So once it's in Blaze range, it is actually stronger than Moltres with its fire attacks. Moltres, on the other hand, doesn't love Meteor Mash damage, obviously. But with Roost, I mean, that goes away. Yeah, you gotta be careful of getting EQ'd on Roost. Okay, sure, whatever. Metagross is still running away. So, I think it would generally be... because generally, Moltres is also in that camp, it's like Zapdos, but even more so, where it can really kind of do whatever it wants with its last move slots, like Flamethrower, HP Grass. Will-O-Wisp generally gets thrown in there, but it's not really necessary. A lot of people like to experiment with Roar, Toxic, Overheat. So with that flexibility, then yeah, you'd love to have Roost. Be able to switch in and heal things off. I mean, not just direct damage either. I mean, we mentioned being guarded against status, but I mean, when you're not dealing with hazards, since it's a flying type, then you are more able to, it's more forgiving to switch into a Toxic from Skarmory or something. Like, yeah, you got this 50% Toxic Moltres, and you Roost as Skarm switches out or protects, and suddenly you're still very much a threat. So you're not instantly on that fast ticking timer. You can, add back more to your timer. Let's put it that way. So... yeah, the fire types are interesting. I don't think Zard would use it nearly as much, especially because Charizard has a very colorful offensive move pool. Like, it's got Dragon Claw and Beat Up and Brick Break / Focus Punch. So I don't think it's going to be using it as much. But yeah, I think Moltres is definitely the better beneficiary of that, and I think that's pretty much, yeah. Those are all the big guns. So, there's also the question of, would Roost have 32 PP a la Recover? And I'll just make the executive decision that no, that would be that would be even more insane. For some semblance of balance. Uh, yeah, at least the Recover Pokemon are affected by spikes, you know? Celebi and Starmie and Milotic. Yeah, that's, yeah, no thank you. So, if it's, I wonder if you would ban Roost if it had 32 PP. For just being too much. But yeah. That's pretty much it. So, thank you for watching / listening, and I will see you again in the next one.